I work at a climbing gym in Bergen, Norway, and last month an American guy asked me if the beginner wall was beginner by European standards or actual beginner standards. I told him it was beginner by Viking standards, so if he fell he'd probably need to raid a village to restore his honor. He nodded seriously, pulled out his phone, and started Googling Norway village raiding laws current. Then he asked if there was a liability waiver specifically for the Viking clause. I had to physically stop him from going to the front desk to inquire about additional insurance. A Polish dentist told me about an American patient who came in for a routine cleaning. She mentioned his teeth were not too catastrophic for an American, which is just standard Polish directness mixed with light teasing. He became convinced she'd discovered some serious condition, demanded a second opinion from another dentist, then tried to report her to what he called the European Dental Standards Commission. When she said that didn't exist, he claimed she was covering for the Polish dental industrial complex and spent 20 minutes explaining how Eastern European dentists were clearly conspiring to upsell Americans. She'd literally just cleaned his teeth normally and charged him €40. My cousin who manages a thermal bath in Budapest watched an American couple arrive during a busy Saturday. When they asked if they needed reservations, he joked, "Only if you want water in your bath," which is just Hungarian sarcasm. They took it literally, asked to speak to whoever handles the waterless bath experience, then demanded a partial refund because they'd been misled about the amenities. They created an entire conspiracy theory about how Hungarian spas were secretly charging full price but only filling the baths halfway to save money. They'd been sitting in a completely full thermal pool for 2 hours. European communication is basically 40% irony, 30% understatement, and 30% teasing, which creates some spectacular misunderstandings when Americans take everything at face value. I'm a museum guard at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and an American tourist asked me where the other Rembrandts were because she'd only seen 12. I said, "Oh, we keep the good ones in the basement for people who actually appreciate art," which is obviously a joke since we literally display our finest collection. She became convinced there was a secret VIP museum tour she wasn't invited to, demanded to speak to the director about discrimination, then tried to cite equal access laws under the Amsterdam Tourism Accords of 1997. When I said that wasn't a real thing, she claimed I was gatekeeping Dutch cultural heritage and threatened to contact the American embassy because this violated the NATO cultural exchange provisions. She spent 3 hours trying to find the basement entrance, which doesn't exist for public access. Security finally had to explain we don't hide Rembrandts from regular visitors, and she left a 1-star review saying we were classist and secretive about our art collection. We literally have the world's largest Rembrandt collection on open display. A pub owner in Edinburgh told me about an American who asked if they served food. He said, but it's Scottish food so you'll probably hate it," which is classic Scottish self-deprecating humor. The American took it as a serious warning, started researching Scottish food safety standards, then asked if there was a waiver he needed to sign acknowledging the health risks of traditional Scottish cuisine. He demanded to see the kitchen's health inspection certificate, asked if they had American-safe alternatives, then tried to order regular food instead of the haggis. When the owner said regular food is what got England in trouble, the American became convinced this was a political statement about Brexit and started asking if the pub accepted American dollars as a neutral currency during the transition period. He eventually ordered fish and chips, ate the entire thing, then told everyone it was surprisingly edible for Scottish standards. My friend who works at a pharmacy in Vienna had an American come in asking for allergy medication. She told him, "This one works if you're not American, but for Americans we usually recommend crying," which was obviously a joke about Americans being overdramatic about European allergies. He took it completely seriously, asked what the medical difference was between American and European allergies, then demanded to speak to a pharmacist who understood American immunology. He claimed Austrian antihistamines were formulated for European immune systems and wouldn't work on his genetically different American histamine receptors. She tried explaining that allergies work the same everywhere, but he'd already created an entire medical theory about how American bodies reject European medications because of different FDA approval processes affecting molecular compatibility. He bought the medication anyway, but made her write a note saying she'd warned him about the American incompatibility in case he needed it for his insurance. The medication worked fine. I'm a train conductor in Switzerland, and an American asked why his ticket from Zurich to Bern cost 60 francs for a 1-hour journey. I said, "Oh, that's the discount price. Normally we charge based on the number of mountains you can see from the window, which is just me making fun of Swiss prices." He took it literally, started counting mountains from the window, then demanded a refund because he only saw 17 mountains but was clearly charged for at least 30. He'd created a spreadsheet on his phone calculating fair market mountain viewing value and tried to show me comparable prices from Colorado's mountain tourism industry. When I explained it was a joke and Swiss trains are just expensive, he accused me of admitting to tourism fraud and said he was going to report this to the Swiss Federal Railway Oversight Committee. He claimed I'd verbally confirmed a mountain-based pricing scheme, and this was documented evidence of systematic tourist exploitation. He filed an actual complaint with SBB about their non-transparent mountain counting methodology. A bike rental owner in Copenhagen told me about an American who asked if the bikes came with helmet. He said, "Helmets are optional, Danes have harder heads from all the Viking genetics," which was obviously making fun of the whole Viking tourism thing Denmark does. She took it as serious medical advice, started researching cranial density differences between American and Scandinavian populations, then asked if she needed to sign a waiver acknowledging her genetically inferior American skull thickness. She demanded proof of the Viking genetics claim, asked if there were helmet alternatives for non-Nordic tourists, then tried to buy additional insurance specifically covering head injuries related to genetic bone density discrepancies. When he explained it was a joke and she should absolutely wear a helmet, she accused him of changing his medical advice for liability reasons and claimed this proved Danish bike rental companies were hiding safety violations behind Viking mythology. She wore the helmet but left a review warning other Americans about Denmark's dangerous Viking-based safety standards. My neighbor runs a small hotel in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and an American guest asked about the breakfast buffet quality. He said, "It's Slovenian breakfast, so basically we stole all the best parts from Italian, Austrian, and Balkan cuisines," which is actually true, but also Slovenes making fun of being a small country surrounded by bigger food cultures. The American took this as a confession that the food was literally stolen, asked if the breakfast was legally sourced, then demanded to see import certificates for all the buffet items. He created a theory that Slovenian hotels were running an international breakfast smuggling operation and tried to ask other guests if they'd noticed anything suspicious about the cheese origins. When my neighbor explained Slovenia is literally surrounded by those countries and their cuisines naturally overlap, the American said, "That's exactly what someone running a continental breakfast cartel would say," and threatened to contact Interpol about cross-border food trafficking disguised as hotel amenities. He ate the entire buffet every morning but took photos for evidence. I'm a postal worker in Tallinn, Estonia, and last week an American came in trying to mail a package to the United States. I told him it would take 2 weeks, and he asked why so long. I said, "Well, we have to send it by reindeer to Finland first, then they put it on the ice road to Sweden," which was me making fun of how Americans think the Baltics are basically the Arctic. He took it completely seriously, asked what the weather conditions were like for the reindeer route, then wanted to upgrade to a faster animal, if possible. I told him we could use the express polar bear service, but it costs more. He actually asked for pricing on the polar bear option. When I finally explained that Estonia has normal postal service with planes and trucks, he got offended and said I'd wasted his time with misinformation about Nordic shipping logistics. Then he asked why I'd lie about the reindeer system if it wasn't real, and I had to explain the concept of making fun of stereotype. He seemed genuinely disappointed that his package was going on a regular cargo plane instead of an Arctic adventure route. A bartender in Krakow told me her favorite story about an American who asked what Polish vodka she recommended. She said, "They're all good, but this one makes you forget the partitions faster," which is a dark history joke about Poland being divided up by other countries. He asked what the partitions were. She explained it was when Poland disappeared from maps for 123 years, and he became convinced this vodka had actual memory-erasing properties. He demanded to see the ingredient list for whatever makes you forget things, asked if it was FDA approved for memory suppression, then wanted to know if he'd forget English or just specifically Polish history. When she said it was a historical joke and the vodka is just regular vodka, he claimed she was walking back claims about the product's effects and accused her of false advertising. He bought the vodka anyway, but made her write down that she'd retracted all statements about memory modification in case he needed it later. He drank it and remembered everything fine, but left a review saying the vodka did not live up to historical trauma erasure promises. The thing about European communication is we've been sarcastic for so long we've forgotten it's not the default setting. Americans arrive expecting everything to mean what it says, and we're over here using irony as a second language. The result is Americans taking elaborate notes on joke policies and Europeans wondering how anyone functions while taking everything seriously. Next week, Americans trying to understand why Europeans can be friends with people they constantly insult, featuring theories about Stockholm Syndrome and cultural Stockholm Syndrome.